everyone, and welcome to our third episode of The Comeback, where we talk with Nevada's leaders in athletics and business about sports, hope, and recovery during the pandemic. I'm DJ Allen with the X's and O's of Success, and today we're at City National Arena, the practice home of the Vegas Golden Knights. And we're with one of the nicest guys in Las Vegas, the president of the Vegas Golden Knights, Kerry Bubolz, and the president of the Latin Chamber of Commerce, Peter Guzman. So Peter, first off, thank you for you and your teammates with the Nevada Business Information Network for putting this series together. How did the Golden Knights and the establishment of Las Vegas as a major league sports market impact this community?
Well, first, let me thank some folks for helping to put this together. Certainly, Martin Harris Construction, Wells Fargo, the Raiders, and of course United Health, who's been a big help in the community. We wouldn't have been able to do this without the leadership of Scott Mulrath from the Henderson Chamber. He's just an awesome colleague and a person who really cares about the community. Look, the impact in our community of Vegas Golden Knights and hockey, I mean, it's so hard to put in words. And I often thought about it, because I remember walking into the first live game and running into friends that because, we're all busy, a lot of times we don't see each other during the week or during the month or even 3, 4, 6 months. And yet when we went to that game, the first game, I remember running into folks and the hugging, the camaraderie, the coming together. I think that's the number one impact. We could talk about financial impact and all the other impacts, and those are important. But I just thought that the community impact, people coming together, seeing each other at the game, having a meal together, having a drink and watching some great hockey, that's priceless.
Kerry, we've had the opportunity over the years to have a lot of conversations about leadership, and we focus so much on what your role you were able to do as the president of a franchise that really was the greatest inaugural franchise in history. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But you went through those challenges, but all of a sudden, like so many business leaders, you get another challenge, the pandemic. And it comes in the middle of March, right when it's a big time on the ice and a big time on the business side of hockey. How have you dealt with that challenge?
Yeah, I think the first part was, to be candid, I didn't believe that we would still be managing through this situation. Early on, I can remember having dialogue with folks on our leadership team, like, look, it's going to be about 2 weeks. And we're going to work through it, and then but having them think about our business in the context of what happens 2 weeks from now, and obviously here we are 4 weeks later. But to get back to your question, I really thought early on that it was important that because people were scared. We were dealing with a lot. March 12th, we shut the league down, and there was a lot that was going on. I remember that Thursday night, March 11th, the NBA and what was happening in Oklahoma City, and it just started to snowball with different events. We were in the middle of the Pac-12 over at T-Mobile Arena. We had to shut that down, and so there was just so much going on and happening at such a rapid pace that I think people were definitely concerned and scared. We sent our organization home, and we told them that we would keep them up to speed as we managed through this. But the one thing that that I really tried to do was make sure that throughout the entire process, and so even though we're back in our office now with a split staff environment, that when we were all away, that there was continuity to their day. And so what I mean by continuity, little things like I was maybe one of the only people in the entire building, but whenever we were having team leader calls, via Zoom or via Microsoft Teams, they always knew that there was a constant presence here at the home base, if you will, at City National Arena. There was always that one light, that one office that was still lit up. And I felt that was really important, just to have that continuity that, hey, everything's going to be okay. The second thing was just on a daily basis, I would send out a note to the group, and I actually did it in the form of a poem, which may seem kind of corny, but I wanted people to again, not to use the poem as a way to kind of maybe laugh a little, maybe take for a lighthearted moment, but accomplish 3 things in each poem. One was to talk about what was still happening in our business, that day. And so we would be very specific to something from that and what was happening in our league. And so I wanted to make sure that they understood. And so we were keeping them up to date and informed. And then lastly, just to have a culture piece. Culture is a big part of our organization. We have what we call the Knights Code, which I know you and I have talked a lot about it. But I would always weave in the last verse of the poem something about our Knights Code, and just, again, that constant reminder about the importance of community is a contact sport, just like hockey. But I did 44 poems. That was about 10 weeks. But I really felt it was important every single day before I left this office that they got that constant moment. So.
Well, if you end up dropping some rhymes during this interview, I don't think we're going to complain to our viewers.
My rhymes, by the way, are they're like third grade level. Again, just try to bring some fun to the day, and just to see the comments people would send back, like, that was really bad, or that was funny, or hey, that didn't rhyme very well. Just it gave people some interaction online after we would send them out each day. So,
like you said, something to look forward to.
Yeah, and they did. And actually, when we got back to the office, the number of people that came back and said, hey, thanks for sending that poem out. I know that was a lot of work every day, but I knew that at that point that it meant a lot to them, and it just kept them engaged.
One thing I've loved about learning about you and working with you is you're not afraid to be different. And that's important, and the people who follow us value that. Over the last couple of years, whether it was through the expansion franchise, whether it was through the pandemic, how have you grown as a leader?
The biggest thing that I've grown is that I've really been able to stay focused on the bigger picture, and so I think I've really learned to separate the real challenge of what's happening externally, and there's been a lot, but to be able to separate that and still keep our business moving forward. And we've been doing a lot. We're launching an American Hockey League franchise in Henderson. We're building a new arena in Henderson. We're finishing another project on Water Street in Henderson, the lifeguard arena. And so in a lot of ways, I feel like the last 4 months have been maybe the busiest I've ever had. But we've tried to keep focused on that versus the emotional side. And don't get me wrong, we all have bad days. And I'm as scared as anybody. I'm as disappointed that we weren't able to finish our season at the time that we should have. But you know what? There's a positive in everything, and we're going to find it. Haven't maybe found every situation, but we're going to find it and try and bring it to the day.
Peter earlier talked about what the Vegas Golden Knights games did for us individually. What role does sports play in the community?
I think it plays many roles, and obviously we could go into, again, Peter mentioned like the economic benefits or the visibility sports bring a community, not only throughout North America, but throughout the world when you talk about a game like the National Hockey League. But I really believe, and I've said this from day one, and the reason I'm such a passionate person about community being a contact sport, that's what sports brings more than anything, is that it does bring a community together. That this has been a connection point that maybe had not existed in a long time in this market, maybe going back to the early days of the Runnin' Rebels. And so when I see that and I feel that in the market, because again, these folks are coming from all over and they have those sports passions, it brings a lot of pride to me, because I've always believed that that's one of the most important things that a sports organization can do.
Peter, as a business leader, what role does sports play in the community?
Well, from a Latin Chamber standpoint, I mean, it is about business, right? We represent businesses, but I got to tell you, when it comes to the community, we were so fortunate, especially the first year. MGM, which is a great partner of ours, gave us a lot of tickets. And I remember I took a group of young Latino and Latina boys and girls to a game. These are folks that not only have never been to a hockey game, they've never been to a live sports game, okay? When I saw their faces, it was amazing. I knew right then and there the power that sports can have on a community. These kids don't get a chance to go to a lot of these live sports. They're going to have a better chance of doing it now because we have so many. But that's a sense of community that you can't put a price on that, right? These kids go out and tell other kids, and then all of a sudden you see a stadium full of community, people coming together for a hockey game. So it's bigger than a hockey game.
When you talk about that first year, and we know the launch was so impressive. And it was the greatest launch of an expansion team in any sports, in any history, on the ice and off the ice. What led to that success?
Well, I mean, again, there's a lot of factors that kind of go into it. I really do believe it starts with our owner, Bill Foley. He laid the foundation that I think was really important. He saw a marketplace that didn't have major professional sports, and there were a lot of people out there, candidly, that thought he was crazy for even considering the type of investment. And so he did a great job of laying that foundation. And then I think he really did a fantastic job of bringing in really strong leadership on the hockey side. George McPhee, who's our president of hockey operations, he understands what it takes to build a winning organization and a winning culture on the ice. And then from the business side, I think what we really tried to do more than anything is really prioritize what was most important to our business. And for me, we talked a lot about, well, what's integral to a strong foundation of a sports organization that can last not just for 1 year or 2 years or 10 years, but 30, 40, and 50 years. And then on the hockey side, because that expansion draft that first year was so important, the preparation that went into what happened on the hockey side of our organization to get ready for that expansion draft, because that was our foundation, right? Our first year of players, I really thought was outstanding. And so those two words, preparation and prioritization, I really think were two words that served us extremely well that first year.
As fans, we know about the on ice and go to the Stanley Cup Finals that first year. Would you talk a little bit about the matrix on the business side? Because Sports Business Journal, it's the franchise of the year for 2018. Talk about some of the matrix so people understand just what the franchise did going against great hockey towns like Chicago and Boston and Pittsburgh.
Yeah, again, we're the 39th largest U.S. market in the country. And so a lot of folks, when you think about Las Vegas, felt like that would be a negative because we rely on local revenues to be successful. And so one of the things that we talked about early on was that we weren't going to allow our market size to determine our expectations. Because if you do that, you would say, well, we're a smaller market, therefore we should have smaller revenues, right? We weren't going to be able to thrive as a business if we looked at it that way. And so we started to look at it and say, well, what would success look like in every revenue category across the NHL? Not being where our market size is, which would be one of the smaller markets in our league, but what do the top 5 markets look like in each category revenue-wise, and how do we strive to be in that top 5 within a 3-year period of time? And so gate revenue, that's ticket revenue. That's the most important local revenue stream. It's about 70% of our total revenues as an organization. That was our first target and our first focus. And I'm proud to say that this past season, number 1 in the league was Toronto, number 2 was New York City, so the Rangers, and number 3 was Las Vegas. So we're third in gate revenue. Local sponsorships. Everybody said Vegas does not have a deep headquarter base, right? Okay, well that may be true, but there are still a lot of businesses in this market that have an interest in utilizing a sports platform to build their own organizations, their own businesses. And I'm proud to say that again, we're already now third in local sponsorships in the entire National Hockey League. Retail from day one, we've done extremely well. The power of the Golden Knights brand, the logo, has been incredibly well received. And so right out of the gate, we were doing fantastic. So we were number 1 in retail all 3 years. Proud to be in the top 5 in TV ratings. T-Mobile is the best sports arena. That's really about our fans. The fans of the Valley coming out and making that experience. A building is a building. What brings it to life are the people and the fan experience. And so to be number 1 in really every one of those kind of fan experience categories from day one has really been something that we've strived for. And so again, not letting our market size determine our expectations.
So let's talk about from day one, because any business, any team that has early success can be threatened by that. Mm-hmm. So how did your focus change as a leader after the first season?
I think more than anything, sometimes you look at different ways to motivate an organization, but I didn't have to make anything up because the motivation was already right in front of us, because every single narrative that we saw, not as much locally, but regionally, nationally, internationally, North American, in the hockey circles in particular, was Well, the Golden Knights just got lucky. They just got lucky, and it was offensive. What happened? Like, if you were to go back to June of 2017 after the expansion draft, the narrative was this may be the worst roster in the history of the National Hockey League. There wasn't one GM that would take our roster after the expansion draft. Yet, when we were in the Stanley Cup Finals, the rules were in their favor, and they just, and then they got a little, the rules were in their favor, and they got lucky. That narrative became the focus of our second season. It's like, look, everybody thinks we got lucky. Let's look at every category. How do we take it up? What does success look like in growing every category? Because we did. We had a lot of success, and a lot of things fell our way. But it wasn't luck. It was execution.
You come to Las Vegas from Cleveland. You're the president and the Cleveland Cavs and win an NBA championship, and of course, running other franchises as well, minor league franchises, and we're going to talk about the Silver Knights later on. But you come out to Las Vegas. Did anything about the community, professionally or personally, surprise you?
Is just how welcoming people were to our brand and our organization, and how willing they were. We mentioned Scott from the Henderson Chamber. I'll never forget meeting him the first time, and he told me the story that he bought season tickets. And I was like, okay, that's great. Not thinking that it was that extraordinary until he told me he had never been to a hockey game in his life. And I was like, what? He said, you know what, I've never been to a game. I'm not familiar with the National Hockey League, but if it's good for our community, I'm willing to give it a shot.
I think what's important that the audience needs to know is that Kerry got a lot of those sponsors that he was talking about earlier by using poetry.
Right.
I think it's an important component that we need to talk about as well, is the fact that his commitment to want to connect with the Latino community. He was so committed and has been true to every single word he spoke about. We talked about going to the schools. We talked about getting kids out to the games. Kerry, talk a little bit about that, about your commitment to the Latino community.
Yeah, Peter, that is a passion, for the organization. And again, going back to that first time that we had the opportunity to meet, we were looking at it first because it was right. Secondly, because we believed it would be good for our business. When you think about the Latino community and the percentage of our overall marketplace, this is an important community in terms of sheer numbers and economic opportunity. And again, it's the right thing. And understanding that a lot of the folks in the Latino community may be bilingual, but we wanted to make sure that at least our product was available in Spanish. It was all the home games available through ESPN Deportes, hear the games in Spanish as well. So that was kind of that first step. And we were able to launch a scholarship program that I'm really proud of. There's 4 young people that now have an opportunity through a commitment from the Golden Knights Foundation and a commitment from the Latin Chamber to basically not just contribute to their scholarship for 1 year, but basically for 4 years. And so it's a fairly significant amount. So each year, 4 new young people will have the opportunity to go through this scholarship program. So we're excited about that. In year 3, you think about important things in the Latino community, the Day of the Dead. And so we said, you know what, let's not just have a Hispanic heritage, let's celebrate something. There were a lot of fun things that we did at the game that night. And then we also, again, through Peter's direction, were able to create clinics in the Latino community. So we did 4 this past year. We bring in the equipment, we bring in some of our staff, and we get kids and we get sticks in their hand and we introduce them and talk a little bit about the game. We talk a lot about being culturally competent. I'll tell you what gives me a lot of pride is when I go to our games and I know we're making an impact. I see the people at the games and I see them wearing our retail products and becoming engaged, and that tells me we're making a difference.
Peter, like you said, it's easy for an organization to come and make that first phone call, but to see the partnership and to see the growth of that relationship, how important is that to you?
And that's what it's become. I mean, it's become a true partnership. I remember sitting in this room with him on that scholarship, and he's being very humble. We're talking about $40,000 commitments. Pick 4 kids and follow them for 4 years. Get in their living room. Become part of their abuela and abuelitos, grandma and grandpas. And his face was like lit up and said, that's the way we got to do it. We're following a kid for 4 years, okay? You become part of their family. It's not only smart business, it's the right thing to do. And that's why I love this organization. They don't just do what's right for business, they do what's right for community.
Well, let's talk a little bit different side of the community now. Let's talk Henderson. 2 questions about the Henderson Silver Knights. First off, what will it be like competitively to have the AHL affiliate here in the market? And then secondly is, what role do you see the Silver Knights having in the community?
Well, first of all, it is important to recognize the city of Henderson before I go through this. They have been unbelievable partners to the Golden Knights organization. And so every step along the way, from what we're doing now at Water Street, making that the home of the Henderson Silver Knights, to the new arena that we're going to build over at the Pavilion site, our hockey guys are over the moon for this. Nothing against Chicago, but Chicago is a 3-hour, 2,000-mile plane trip from here. They're literally 20 minutes down the road now in Henderson. The ability for all of our scouts to come here, see the NHL level players coming through T-Mobile, but also to see the AHL players coming through, again, not just our organization, but part of their job is to find other players in other organizations that may be a fit in our organization. So they are literally over the moon. We've played 3 years in the AHL. We've been to the finals, if you will, the Calder Cup in year 2. We've won our division 2 of the 3 years. So we've been very, very successful, very competitive with our AHL team. And then put all of that aside. This is going to be an incredible business venture for the city of Henderson. It's going to be an incredible business opportunity for the Golden Knights to build our brand, because now we're building it at multiple levels in the community. But it's going to complement and really fit well versus compete with our NHL brand. For a town that 5 years ago had 0 hockey, it truly shows that this community is definitely a hockey town. So,
one final question on Golden Knights. We're getting ready to drop the puck here, August 3rd versus Dallas. Let's talk competitively really quickly. Of course, before everything shut down, had won 11 out of 13 games.
Right.
Had everything rolling. What are the expectations with the restart?
It's going to be amazing hockey. The fan part of it is disappointing because that's such a big part of our identity as an organization, but every team is going to be in a similar situation. So it's going to be some of the best hockey that I think fans of the NHL have seen. We're healthy. Everybody's healthy. Everybody's rested. There shouldn't be any reasons why we can't go to this tournament and have a legitimate chance to compete for a Stanley Cup. Now, with that being said, every other team is healthy as well, which what I think makes, from a pure hockey perspective, makes it extremely exciting, because everybody's going to be coming at it with their full capability. It's going to be a great tournament, and we're going to get after it on August 3rd, and I can't wait.
Now it's time during the comeback that we call our timeout. We ask 5 simple questions to find out a little bit more about the individuals, Kerry and Peter. Question number 1, favorite TV show? And I think I know this.
You do. Definitely The Family Feud. Obviously, only when the Golden Knights aren't on.
We share that interest, Steve Harvey. We got a good one for you. Favorite TV show?
Kings of Queens, man.
Oh, yes.
Love that show. Do marathons, watch reruns. Just love that show.
You spend every night with the Heffernans just hanging out.
Of course.
All right.
Best.
Question number 2. The first sporting event you remember attending?
So there's probably 2, and I don't remember which one was first. My dad actually got season tickets through his company for the minor league hockey team in my hometown in Tulsa. The first major league event that I went to was a baseball game at the old Brewers Stadium. It was called Milwaukee County Stadium.
And mine was the Miami Dolphins. I was born in Miami, so a huge Dolphin fan. Last 2 behind a bunch of people. I could barely watch the game. It was the most exciting thing I ever did.
Right.
Never forgot that day.
3 of your favorite movies ever?
First favorite, easy by far, like there's not even really a close second, is Forrest Gump. I'm going to put Hangover, the first one.
There's a hometown bias too.
Yeah, no, there is. And then action, kind of action adventure. Really the second Rambo movie.
Peter, three favorite.
Number one is so easy. God, it's The Godfather. It's the greatest movie ever made. Two, if there's not hockey or something else, I'm definitely watching Westerns. And Rio Bravo is such a great movie that I love it. And third is, gosh, there's so many great movies. I could say this, during quarantine, it's been The Hangover, because it's been on every single day. I mean, it's just crazy how many times they're repeating The Hangover.
Well, we talk about quarantine, we're watching TV, we're watching movies. Fourth question, it ties into that. Your favorite guilty pleasure snack?
Well, I don't know if I call it a snack because I don't eat a lot of snacks, like cake and cookies and things like that. But Chalk Hill Chardonnay would be my favorite guilty pleasure snack. So,
if you define it as a snack, it's a snack.
That's right.
I mean, this is unbelievable, right? Poetry and Chardonnay, right? This is what I got to compete with.
Yes.
Mine's Carl's Jr. Okay, I sneak away every once in a while, and I gotta have the Western.
Oh,
The Western bacon cheeseburger.
Absolutely.
It's every
That's
once
the
in a while
go-to.
only, but it's my go-to.
Love
That's
it.
good.
Final question. Best leadership advice you ever received?
It was a coaching moment, of course. He said, you need to write everything down because you're not smart enough to remember. So I was a little harsh.
I've heard you say that multiple times. I love it, and I think it's something that a lot of young professionals can use right now. Best leadership advice?
Mine came from my best friend in the whole world, who's no longer with me, my father, who crossed an ocean from Cuba at 17 on a boat. And he gave me advice when I started climbing in real estate, and he said, son, always treat the busboy the same way you treat the owner of the restaurant. And I swear I carry that with me every day.
Peter, we call this series The Comeback for a reason. Why is this message so important right now to you and to business leaders throughout the state of Nevada?
Well, I'll piggyback a little bit off my colleague, Scott Morworth, who kind of came up with that. And, I think came out of a moment of, we're all going through a hard time, and it happened very quickly, and we all love this community very, very much. And I think Scott felt like it was time to maybe have some positive news, something good to talk about, and in lines with the spirit of who we are in this community. We are the comeback kings. I mean, we come back, and we come back fighting. Well, that's our spirit, and so I think it was perfectly timed and very important for our community to do this.
Kerry, how similar are teams in business and teams in sports?
I think it's mostly the fundamentals that go into it. And so any team on the ice and any team off the ice, they need to be strong in the fundamentals. And so when you think about the game on the ice and what that looks like fundamentally, how those fundamentals are reinforced and coached on a consistent basis. So I think that's important, but also as you think about that from a business perspective, and again, just going back to that first year, which was so special, there was nothing special about it. It was just execution of the fundamentals.
Obviously, just listening to you here today, and if you spent any time around you, you could tell that he's about people. So you have to recruit people to your organization. What traits do you look for in teammates?
If you're willing to come to, bring your lunch pail to work and put in the effort and do it with a high level of energy and enthusiasm and a smile, you can be successful, I believe, in anything you do if you bring that energy and that enthusiasm and that motor, because you can't fake fun, right? And that will come across to that other individual that you're trying to motivate to invest in you. So the trait that to me is most important is like, what kind of motor do they have? Do they have a vibe? Do they have an energy about themselves? And you can just feel it.
So Peter, we just heard Kerry talk about winning teams, talked about teammates. What are the similarities that you see between sports teams and teams in business?
Well, listen, I think the fundamentals of business and sports are the same, right? There's a competitive nature. There's the ability to pivot, change quickly. You have to be able to do that in business and in sports. You get an injury or you get employees that call off sick, you're pivoting but you still have a product to put out, right? And you still want to put the best out there you can. So I think the similarities go hand in hand together. And in order to reach total success, you have to have those fundamentals correct.
Right. We talk about pivoting, for a team to be able to come back. We get behind, or there's a injury or something happens. Well, we look at the pandemic. There's so much uncertainty now. Mm-hmm. And we know we're going to have to come back. Mm-hmm. How do you lead right now through this, and what do you need from your team?
I'm going to lead the way that I talked about before, with stability and positivity. And so just a recent example, early this morning with our sponsorship group, we had a Zoom call. Half the folks are in the office, half are still at home. And we were going through all of the numbers and just everything that we do every Monday, 9 o'clock. It's the same meeting. And just using that time when it's my time to address the group to speak again about the momentum of our business. Yeah, I could talk for 2 hours about negative things that are happening, but that doesn't do any good. It just brings us in the wrong direction. So let's talk about the positives that are happening in our business.
Kerry, I appreciate you being here with us today. Anytime we talk, always learn something. And today we found out he was a poet, but we do always learn something. But last question for you. For those business leaders around the state of Nevada who are looking for their own comeback, what advice do you have for them?
Well, a lot of it's some of what we've talked about already in terms of being a source of positivity in terms of how you think about this opportunity, because it would be real easy to just be focused on the negative things that happen. So I would really encourage businesses to think about what their strengths are and what they're really good at, and focus a lot of their resources in that direction, because I do believe it's important as we move forward, and we will move forward. This is a point in time. This is not forever.
You talk about being positive, part of the solution. I know that's how you operate. You don't just say it. Peter, how about you? Any final words to those business leaders throughout the state?
Yeah, listen, we know that they're struggling. We know there is some struggle out there. We focus on the positives. We know that there's opportunities. I think that the chambers have come together. We did what we call the pivot, which is something you have to do in business. We're bringing real content. We're bringing real resources to help our great businesses not only survive this moment, and it is a moment, and we're going to get past it, but to be prepared for that fast train that's coming afterwards, where it's going to be a lot of opportunities, and businesses and business leaders need to be ready for that as well.
Peter, thank you. Kerry, thank you.
Thank you.
And go Knights go.
Go Knights go.
Thank you once again for joining us for an episode of The Comeback. We'll be back in just a couple weeks when we have a great conversation with Doug Knuth, the athletic director of the Nevada Wolfpack, as well as Ann Silver, the CEO of the Reno and Sparks Chamber of Commerce. Until then, remember, business is a team sport, and we're rooting for you. Be great.